You won't believe it, but the news just came in. And now hold on to your hats, because the Bitcoins in the US could be stolen or lost. The Marshals in the US currently have no idea how many Bitcoins there are, and that's just mind-blowing. I already mentioned a bit about this in the last video, but now there are some explosive backgrounds to this. And there's also a new article that was published, where some insiders who are active in the Marshals Service were talked to. I mean, this is an absolute disaster, that somehow there are 200,000 Bitcoins involved. Maybe a large part of it is stolen or just a small portion. Not all Bitcoins are definitely stolen, but maybe a few are. Even if it's just a few thousand or so that are stolen or lost. I mean, this is just unbelievable. It is now said that despite its role in managing the seizure of digital assets, the US Marshals Service does not appear to know how many cryptocurrencies it currently owns. In fact, he even finds it difficult to provide an estimate of his Bitcoin holdings, a source familiar with the matter told CoinDesk. I'll also link the articles below so you can read through them yourself. And the whole situation is definitely critical. Here for Bitcoin for the Strategic Crypto Reserve, or whatever you want to call it, the Bitcoin Reserve, depending on what potentially comes up, is definitely something to look at critically. We'll get into why this is something to be concerned about later. I mean, if they have no idea how much Bitcoin there even is, how are they supposed to build a strategic Bitcoin reserve? And now it's also being reported as breaking news that the Biden administration and the US Marshals Service can't account for Bitcoins worth several $billion, which is leading to speculation that the Bitcoins are stolen. So we can clearly see that there are speculations. It's not officially confirmed that anything has been stolen here. But those speculations are already out there. And now they're talking about billions of dollars. So I don't really think that billions are lost here. It's probably just a small number of Bitcoins, but who knows? I don't have any insights here, but I just can't imagine that they'd lose like 100,000 Bitcoins or not know where all the Bitcoins are. But this whole thing is really a complete mess. Later on, we'll also get some insights into how they do things, like how they don't really have proper bookkeeping, that they're just using random Excel spreadsheets, that they're not trained at all, and that they have no clue how all this custody stuff works with Bitcoin. So that's just crazy. That somehow you can get 200,000 Bitcoin, you manage it, but you have no idea how many there are, whether the Bitcoins exist or whether the Bitcoins have been stolen. There's no clear statement on this. I mean, it could also be an unsettlement tactic by the USA, but it just doesn't look like it. And it doesn't look like the Trump administration is involved either. This seems to be tied back to Biden. There is also a corresponding article here. Biden administration lost track of billions in seized crypto. So it seems like it's not just Bitcoin here, but also Ethereum, or whatever else is going on. And in the article, it even says here, as far as I know, that the US Marshals Service is currently managing it with individual pocket changes in an Excel spreadsheet, says Chip Borman, Vice President for Strategy and Bids at ADEX Corporation, blah, blah, blah. So, some insider who has been involved with the Marshals Service for a while. He said here, Borman says that he processes of the US Marshals Service in 2023. I've observed it firsthand. And he also adds that they are just one bad day away from a $1 billion mistake. So, it wouldn't surprise him if suddenly $1 billion in Bitcoin goes missing. Because they have no clue about self-custody, they have no idea about accounting, and they're just being careless here. It's just more of those bureaucratic processes that are being uncovered here. I mean, it's getting exciting now. Now Trump wants, and Elon Musk wants to audit Knox, the Fed, and whatnot. Maybe the Marshals Service will get audited too. That would be interesting. Then it might come out that not only is there only half the gold at Fort Knox, but maybe it'll also come out that the US Marshals Service doesn't actually have 200,000 Bitcoin, but only 100,000 because somehow a few Bitcoins have gone missing, a few Bitcoins have been lost, a few Bitcoins have sunk in the balance sheet, and for a few Bitcoins, they've lost access to them. I mean, I'm just thinking of something here. Of course, that's not true. It's just my imagination, but that could happen now. So ultra crazy, I really don't have the words. If you are not managing your own money, but the money of others, then you are not being very careful. And you will make mistakes. Then you say, screw it. We don't really know how it works. We'll just do something. And when you manage your own money, you're usually a bit more. Exactly, I mean, none of you would handle 200,000 Bitcoin and would then somehow do the accounting in an Excel spreadsheet. And then not know how many Bitcoins there are. Then somehow with the self-checkout, who can't find their way around and so on. So I'm telling you again, I'm gonna put a link down below to coin tracking, where you can easily track your portfolio. Here, you can generate tax reports, and you can see exactly which coins are in the holding period and which ones aren't. You can even sign up for free. The first few hundred trades or so are free. And with the code SCOTEL, if you sign up for a subscription, you also get a discount. It's a recommendation, and it goes out to the Marshals Service too, because it just can't be that you have like 200,000 Bitcoins. And later, half of it is stolen. And they don't even know. Raja Zoni, a Bitcoin analyst here, says here in X, he's betting that they lost the private keys here. And he also posts another article, US Marshals Service cannot account for seized Bitcoin. Does this increase speculation about whether it's lost? I mean, who knows if it was stolen or what? Those kinds of stories. And then there's a very, very interesting section down here that says, this discrepancy arises amid discussions about establishing a national crypto reserve and highlights procedural and organizational challenges within the agency. And now there's the other side. So you could say, okay, they're that clueless, and the two governments have it all somehow, poorly managed. They don't know how to handle it, and they've recklessly put the bitcoins at risk. Those are the bitcoins of the citizens here, the US citizens, you could say, just like the gold reserves or something. Then it's like, hey, these are the gold reserves of the USA, these are the gold reserves of the citizens, just like the bitcoins. And now there's this theory. What if all of this is being done on purpose? What if they're intentionally keeping bad records? Because it was also noticeable that, for example, Joe Biden, just before the Trump administration, right before he took office, ordered the US Marshals to sell the bitcoins. And I don't really know if they're actually selling Bitcoin here. Some say a few are being sold, while others say no. But there was definitely the order to sell the bitcoins just before Donald Trump became president. And it could very well be that, in addition to the order, there's some confusion here. They might have done it on purpose by not really keeping proper accounts. Or maybe they even threw away the records. Or something like that. I don't know, this is really just speculation on my part. So I wouldn't put too much weight on whether this is correct or something like that. But I can totally imagine, based on how I see both governments, that they might actually want to make it even harder for Donald Trump to launch a crypto reserve. And how do you do that? First, by selling Bitcoin, and second, by covering up all the records, by messing up the accounting, or by just doing the accounting really, really poorly. And then the succeeding government just has really, really big problems. There was actually a really, really good statement about this on Twitter. Someone here writes that the mismanagement of crypto by both administrations is a prime example of bureaucratic incompetence. The U.S. Marshals Service can't account for billions in seized bitcoins and relies on error-prone spreadsheets instead of proper systems. This isn't an accident. It's a systematic failure. That's exactly what I was talking about. That might really be the system. It also says here that Sam Bankman-Fried called Biden's crypto policy incredibly destructive. While Trump prioritizes American innovation over globalist scams, the elites in Washington are burning their money and then blaming the complexity. The real problem is that the elites in Washington aren't doing so well anymore. They're too busy. They're too busy filling their pockets to secure any assets. Another example of government waste, lies, and repetition. So, it really could be that some folks are lining their pockets here, at least according to the assessment here. I mean, it would be totally insane if it comes out that not only in the US is money going missing, not just here, but also in other offices and, let's say, bureaucratic functions here in the US, money is disappearing, but the US, the marshals are also passing around a few bitcoins every now and then, because they just have no control and no one here is keeping track. And I mean, if there's no accounting, if no one knows how many bitcoins there are, I mean, what happens when someone decides to open their wallet? Or something like that. I mean, they might try to manage it cleverly or whatever, but if someone is lining their pockets, it might not even be noticed. Because if you don't know how much Bitcoin you have, then you also don't know how much Bitcoin is missing. I mean, it's a pretty simple calculation, even though I don't want to accuse anyone of anything here. In the article that I already showed you earlier, it's also a bit about, okay, what are the US Marshals doing? That means the US Marshals Service is responsible for managing assets that are seized during criminal investigations, including real estate, cash, jewelry, antiques, and vehicles. So it's not just Bitcoin and stuff. Additionally, he is responsible for handling cryptocurrencies, including billions of dollars in Bitcoin that the FBI seized from the darknet marketplace Silk Road in 2013. Then it says here again, in fact, he even finds it difficult to give an estimate of his Bitcoin holdings. But now here comes the exciting part. This uncertainty could become a bigger problem, especially after the White House crypto czar David Sachs announced earlier this month that the US government is actively considering the creation of a national crypto reserve. If this plan is implemented, the government could stop liquidating seized cryptocurrencies and instead start buying crypto themselves. From what I can gather here, the order is still in place for the marshals to continue selling cryptocurrencies. Whether that's actually happening or not, no idea. Feel free to let me know in the comments. I can't confirm that, but there are definitely issues with the accounting, and that leads to problems in the potential crypto reserve, or maybe even here in the potential sovereign fund, where Bitcoin might also be included. So the question is, okay, will the seized Bitcoin be transferred to the strategic Bitcoin reserve? Or will they be moved to the sovereign fund instead? I don't have any insight into that or anything. These are just some possibilities that I can imagine. There are also issues with how the authorities are handling things. Timothy Clark, CEO of crypto consulting firm ECC Solutions, etc., says here that both in the public and private sectors for years, frustration with the US Marshals Service is growing. So apparently they haven't been doing a good job for years. As of 2019, the US Marshals Service was only managing a handful of crypto assets. About 8 or 10, Clark said. As a result, all other US agencies had to develop their own storage methods, instead of the US Marshals Service fulfilling its own duties and centrally managing the seized cryptocurrencies. So, that might be the reason why Bitcoin keeps getting transferred back and forth here. We saw this happen repeatedly last year, where it was said that the US is now selling Bitcoin and so on. What happens then is that things would just be shuffled around internally, and you can do the whole thing. Here's the explanation. He also noted that it took weeks for the US Marshals Service to provide the authorities with a Bitcoin deposit address after a seizure. And even then, these addresses would just be sent via unencrypted email without any verification process. I mean, just think about that for a second. They're just sending Bitcoin addresses back and forth. And that at the state level. And then they transfer like 40,000 Bitcoin or something. And I mean, if in this email where nothing is encrypted, if some hacker were to get in there, if the Lazarus group who hacked the Bybit stocks would have intercepted an email, or something like that. If they had simply swapped the Bitcoin address here, then at the end the US Marshal Service would have entered the wrong Bitcoin address. And then the Bitcoin wouldn't have ended up in the new US depot. So how can you send something like this unencrypted, such Bitcoin addresses, when somehow hundreds of thousands of Bitcoins are being transferred back and forth? Or let's say not hundreds of thousands, but just thousands of Bitcoin are being transferred back and forth. So that's a big question mark for me. And here you can see that the security standards don't seem to be that high. And if this is really the case, as it's being reported here, I wouldn't be surprised if 1 or 2 Bitcoins have gone missing, just lost in the balance sheet. Maybe the private keys got lost, or maybe the whole thing was even hacked, who knows? And the insider here, Clark, also says that it's really shocking that in all the years they've been operating like this, nothing bad has happened. So you could probably have totally exploited this, taken advantage of it. And I mean, if this is now the hackers from the Lazarus group, I mean, that's probably setting off alarm bells for them. I mean, this is a super easy target to hack the US Marshals Service, at least from what I've understood here. I mean, we still have to say that this is just a statement. I'll link the article below where various insiders are quoted. Could also be lies then. That could also be the case. The Marshal Service is totally based and all. And here, they're just throwing out something bland or whatever. I don't know. Let me know in the comments what you think. If you want to buy Bitcoin, I'll put a link in for you. 21 Bitcoin, how you can easily, safely, and simply buy Bitcoin. Absolutely recommended, folks. And here with the code, you can still get up to 20% off the fees when buying Bitcoin. Guys, see you. Peace out.